Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. In today's interview, you're going to learn easy lifestyle changes that you can start doing today that are going to make huge changes to your overall health and well being. One of the habits I highly recommend you take on is soaking in magnesium. If you haven't already, go to learntruehealth.com and search Kristen Bowen and listen to my episodes with Kristen Bowen. She shares about all the benefits for soaking in magnesium. Now, I don't mean Epsom salt or those magnesium flakes. I'm talking about her concentrated, undiluted magnesium from the Zextine sea that also contains other cofactors. We've actually had over 2,000 of our listeners purchase her magnesium soak and have amazing results. And many of them have shared the results in the Facebook group, in the Learn True Health Facebook group. I myself have had fantastic results. I love soaking in her magnesium, and they've done tests where they've seen that the body uptakes 20 grams of magnesium while soaking in it. All you do is put a quarter of a cup of her magnesium soak in a big bowl or basin of water and put your feet in it, just enough to cover your feet. And it doesn't matter what temperature the water is. So if it's summer, you can have cool water. I did that last summer when it was really hot, and it was very refreshing. And of course, over the winter, it's nice to have hot water to put your feet in. And then you soak for about 45 minutes. You can do it between 30 minutes and an hour to optimally get all the magnesium that you'll get in that session. You stay in it for an hour. And for children, you can actually put it in their bathtub. It's completely safe. We noticed right away that our son started sleeping better when we put the magnesium soak in his bath, and he became calmer, which was really exciting. My restless legs went away. My fatigue that I had, I still was having sleep problems because my son was colic, and so I'd be up with him in the night, and I would have fatigue, and I noticed that my fatigue was significantly diminished. I had more energy. My muscle cramps went away, and I'd been taking oral magnesium for years, and I was still deficient. And she explains why you can take her magnesium, her soak in her magnesium, and even if you're taking oral magnesium, you'll have even better results because your body absorbs what it needs. So go check out my interviews with Kristen Bowen. You can actually just purchase her magnesium soak by going to livingthegoodlifenaturally.com. That's livingthegoodlifenaturally.com. And be sure to use the coupon code LTH. That's the special listener discount. I also highly recommend checking out her magnesium muscle cream, as it is in our home absolutely mandatory to always have a jar of her cream around. If anyone in our family has a headache, usually just a tension headache, we rub it on our neck and our headache immediately goes away. It is very soothing for any kind of aches or pains. It's highly concentrated magnesium that you would put locally on the skin. I've also used it on my son when he had a bump and he had some pain, because magnesium helps the body to turn off the pain response. So there's many uses for magnesium, and I absolutely love her magnesium products. So that's Kristen Bowen. You can go to learntruehealth.com, type in Kristen Bowen to find all the episodes with her. She shares about even how she's used magnesium to help rid herself of parasites. So we've had some great interviews and great discussions. Come join the Learn True Health Facebook group and if you're interested, ask other listeners, other members of our community to share their experiences with her magnesium soak. I just think it's a wonderful habit for self-care. It's something that you can do while you're watching TV or even while you're working during the day at your desk. I often do it when I'm doing an interview. You can also use her soak like in the bathtub, like I mentioned, or you can even use it in the sauna, or you can go outside because it's the summertime and soak your feet outside while you're just enjoying nature and breathing or reading a book. This is such a great habit that'll help you to decrease your stress levels and achieve the goals that our doctor today in this episode is going to share with you. Thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you so much for sharing this episode and other episodes with your friends and family. Please continue sharing this podcast so we can help as many people as possible to learn true health. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 438. I am so excited for today's interview. We have on the show one of my favorite kinds of guests, naturopathic physician, Dr. Jannine Krause. So excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Ashley.
Yes. Now you practice naturopathic medicine and acupuncture, and you are also a podcast host. So we'll make sure that the listeners know how to get to your podcast, the Health Fix podcast, and we'll have the links to your podcast and website in the show notes of today's podcast at learntoyourhealth.com. Now you went to Bastyr University here in Washington State, so that's a university I'm very familiar with. I love so many of the naturopaths that I work with have gone there. How long has it been since you graduated?
I graduated in 2007, so it's been 13 years, actually this month. So, wow. Yeah, 13 years.
Time flies, right?
Mm-hmm,
It just feels like yesterday. That's crazy. Since you started practicing, what has really, in the last 13 years, what has really surprised you? Have you had any big aha moments as a doctor?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think in the last, I'd say 5 years, it's kind of started to come together for me that less is more. And daily routines are more important than all of the herbs and supplements and trying to really spend a lot of efforts on, testing the daylights out of people. While that's still important, it's just that I'm finding that less is more, and some of our daily routines might need to be tweaked to get the results we're looking for.
What kind of daily habits did you tweak in your clients that saw you maximize the results, that had you have those aha moments?
One of the biggest ones is breathing, which seems kind of silly because obviously we have to do it, otherwise we wouldn't be alive. But actually having folks take the time to slow down their breath, but also target it when they're feeling stressed or when they're finishing up a workout. Because so many folks I see, I'm in a little bit of a different practice maybe in terms of I have a lot of folks who have chronic pain and chronic illnesses, but then I have a whole other subset of folks that are athletes and pushing themselves to the limits and finding, that, gosh, they just seem wired all the time, anxiety, things of that nature. But if we could get them to breathe and slow down for 5 minutes after a workout, it's like this parasympathetic reset. So finding that breathing is this amazing tool was kind of a big game changer.
I love it. It's so funny. My husband holds his breath all the time. He doesn't realize he's doing it, but when he's stressed or concentrating, he'll hold his breath in and then he'll just do this big exhale. And I'm like, you got to breathe. You just have to take slow, deep breaths, become more conscious of it. If people do that, they get tense up and then they hold their breath. Do you have any steps for teaching people like how to reorganize their brain so they begin to breathe in a healthier way?
Absolutely. It comes down to kind of setting a routine. It's much like anything that you're going to practice, like learning how to ride a bike. You had to do it a couple times before you got in your groove. And in the same case with breathing, I have folks waking up in the morning, starting their breathing practice. And some people, are already down with meditating and have that going on. And, they've got their thought process going. And they're just not really taking advantage of the breathing aspect that they could integrate into it. Or we have another set of folks who the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning, they grab their phones and start looking at, the news feed or texts or things of that nature. So there's a great little time frame in our morning when we first open our eyes that we can work on some of our breathing techniques. And I'm talking like 5 count inhale, 7 count exhale, that kind of stuff. And then finding time throughout the day that we can practice it. And usually I'm finding that folks will have a little stressors right around the time that they're either at driving to work or right before they start work. So I'll do another session then. And then after work, kind of trying to close down the day. Because I think so many of us go from work and then boom, right to the next thing. Now, granted, the coronavirus has kind of given us a little time to not have to have so many social events after work. But unfortunately, so many people don't take advantage of that time frame after work to unwind. And I think that's a great time to start to practice working on breath work and flipping out of the sympathetic mode into parasympathetic mode so that you can chill for the rest of the evening.
And For those who don't know what that is, you're switching
Yeah.
the nervous system into a state of healing and switching it out of a
Mhm.
state of stress.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sympathetic, we're all sympathetic driven just the way our society is, meaning that we're constantly on alert. Our nervous system is in fight or flight mode most of the time. And to switch into parasympathetic, which is known as rest, digest, and I add in the chill component, it's huge for us because so many people are caught in being chronically fatigued and chronically anxious because they're literally running marathons within their body, whether they, realize it or not. That sympathetic mode and that fight or flight mode just keeps them on for hours and hours on end. And taking more time to pull yourself out of it and flip that switch is huge. It can be a game changer.
Since naturopathic medicine is science-based, what changes did you see in labs, or did you actually see some changes when your patients started to change their breathing that had you go, aha, this minimalistic approach is actually, we're maximizing all the things we're doing with them because they've started to breathe better?
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of one of the ways when I started to connect, like, what if we tried this, would it change labs? And in particular, a couple different things that I found over time. Cortisol, in particular, saliva cortisol tests are something that I use, and I use it in terms of 4 points. So if folks who are listening aren't familiar with a saliva cortisol test, you are going to spit into a little tube, and you're going to do it when you wake up, and you're going to do it before lunch, before dinner, and before bedtime. And what we're going to do is look at that pattern in terms of what's happening with your cortisol release. Naturally, we're supposed to have higher amounts of cortisol in the morning, and then it's going to taper off and it's going to go down lower to get us ready to go to bed in the evening. And what I found with a lot of folks who were not taking the time to breathe and were pretty stressed out, I found that we had either really high spikes in the morning right about the time the folks were going to go to work, or we were having higher earlier spikes, say 3, 4 in the morning, which can also be related to hormone stuff. And we can talk about that later. But I would see that. And then I would see a second blip of an increase in cortisol right around the evening time, almost like someone was becoming more amped up, and the body was having signals that they should have more cortisol around 5, 6 p.m. And so with working with breath work, I timed it to when the cortisol was out of range. And like I mentioned before, the morning is always a good time for most people. I see that 9 times out of 10. And then I see it 9 times out of 10 before work, and then this evening time. So I had people working on their breath work, and then 3 months later or 6 months later, depending on the individual, we were retesting. And sure enough, we were able to bring down the cortisol from doing that. I also added in a little bit of ashwagandha as well in some cases. So I can't say, 100% breathing, but I did see in quite a few folks quite a difference of bringing things down. So that was one of my first inclinations, like, okay, we can do this. Then the next was starting to look at hormones and thyroids, because so many people are on thyroid medication and they're not seeing results. They're not feeling good. And as a naturopathic doctor, I get mad, right? I'm like, I'm not fixing this person. Why am I not helping them? What's going on? What are we doing wrong? And one of the things I found is that if we can get the body out of sympathetic mode a little bit more, we start to see the T4, which is your hormone that comes directly out of the thyroid. We start to see that coming up, and we start to see conversion better. So T4 is the hormone that comes out of the thyroid, and it gets converted to T3. And we're starting to see higher levels of T3 compared to someone who had lower T3 levels. And we're just getting more and more medication to try to bump up the T3. So a little more Cytomel, if you're familiar with that medication, that is a T3 supplement. I found that these folks didn't need these medications anymore. It's almost as if their metabolism was starting to kick in naturally on their own when we were working with getting them out of sympathetic mode and more into parasympathetic mode with breathing.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So the body becomes more efficient. It
Hmm.
responds to protocols. I think in this society, we really do not value getting out of stress mode. We really don't value self-care And it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's for other people. I'm a mom. Also have a job. I also, I have this, I have that. And we think like, well, I've got to cook dinner, and then I have to do this, and I have this list of things I have to do. And we don't put self-care on that list, right? Because it doesn't seem
Mhm.
important. I was just talking to a client yesterday who would she has these bouts of panic attacks where it's so bad she has to lie on the floor and just do breathing, and her whole body feels like it's dizzy and spinning and her heart is pounding. And I said to her, we talked about a list that she can make of things that really help to manage her stress, like going for walks, taking a hot shower while doing some breathing in the shower, and having a tickle fight with her kids, like make a list of things she knows gets her out of stress mode, and to do them throughout the day. And I said, I bet if you think about the last time you had one of those panic attacks where on the floor, like totally unable to be there for your kids because you have to lie on the floor for 45 minutes. If you think about it, there were signs leading up to that. There's signs throughout the day
Mhm.
leading up to the heart palpitations, leading up to, and if she'd gone to an MD, they might have put her on medication for the heart palpitations, medication for high blood pressure, medication for the anxiety. Meanwhile, it does not, none of those medications, they mask symptoms, but they're not addressing what caused her to have a panic attack in the first place, which is not taking care of herself in terms of self-care and managing her stress and doing activities that get her body out of the sympathetic mode and into the parasympathetic healing response. So I just can't imagine how many people are on drugs, multiple drugs,
Mhm.
and how many people are on drugs like you said, with the thyroid medication, where the medication is even working efficiently because
Mhm.
of their lifestyle, simple things they could change. Their
Yeah.
lifestyle is causing their body to break down instead of be in healing mode. So I'd love for you to talk more about the physiological effect of stress on the body and the physiological effect of getting out of stress mode, so we can really understand how important it is to install the self-care as little as 5 minutes in the morning, doing some deep breathing, install self-care throughout the day in order to make the whole body go into that healing mode and stay away from the disease mode, which is being in chronic stress mode.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the big connections that I like for folks to kind of make here about the physiological effects of stress. I have so many folks that come in to see me and they have the anxiety and different things that we would think about stress. But what they don't connect is, why does the weight keep going up? Because, they're like, I need more thyroid meds. I need my hormones adjusted. No, I don't think it's all that, because I've done that with so many people. And in my 13 years, I'm kind of like, no, it's lifestyle. And I've seen it over and over again work. But physiological effects of stress, you're going to gain some weight, or yes, you could lose weight. But what happens is we start to have fatigue to the point where you wake up in the morning and maybe you've had 8 to 10 hours of sleep and you're like, I feel like I got no sleep. I'm so tired. I could sleep for 20 more hours, just wanting to like pull the sheets back over your head and just crash back out. Or where another area of fatigue you can see is folks might be getting out of bed and kind of plugging through the day, but like 2 o'clock, they're like starting to really crash. And I mean, not just like you can solve it with going by the candy dish at the office or picking up a snack. It's like you have to lay down on the couch and actually take a nap. That is where we're really starting to hit the wall with stress. Another biggie physiologically that I'll see with folks is that we actually see the labs start to change. I was talking about it a little bit more in terms of the thyroid, where the TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, and this is signaling from brain to the thyroid, this number starts to go up. And it may not be in a completely abnormal number. So let's say it's around 2.5, 3. The number at which conventional medicine starts to say you need medication is around 4.5. Some doctors are changing that. Naturopaths start to think about, we got problems when we're seeing that TSH around 2. And this is going, okay, so our brain is trying to tell our thyroid, hey, we need something going on, like metabolism slowing down. What are we doing? Why aren't you responding to me? So that's one physiological sign. The T4 is another one. This is where that hormone coming out of the thyroid starts to also slow down. So now we're not pumping out the main hormone from the thyroid that has to get converted for us to have proper metabolism. And so now we're having issues with low T4 and T3. That could be some physiological changes that you might see. The next thing is blood sugar starts to creep up. And we'll see that someone's A1C, which is blood sugar over time, in about 3 months average snapshot of what's going on with their blood sugar, you might start to realize all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I'm pre-diabetic, which is an A1C of 5.7. Or you might be like right on the borderline. Or you might actually have your fasting glucose going up and you're going, okay, that's weird. And you're gaining weight on top of that. And your thyroid numbers are starting to suffer and be lower. These are some of the physiologic signs. Now, another physiologic sign that's really common and a lot of people will start to like play off is multiple food sensitivities. When you start to be like, I just can't tolerate foods anymore, or I can't tolerate dairy, wheat, wine. That's usually when people start getting upset, is when the wine is starting to bother them, and I'll get complaints. But that is a sign that you're physiologically starting to become stressed because your body's getting overloaded. Rashes are another big physiologic sign that we're starting to overload the system. So that's a snapshot of what's most common. I will tend to see also things where we've got autoimmune antibodies starting to pop up. And when we go specifics, we don't see anything specific, but the autoimmune antibodies come up as well. So the body starts to attack itself a little bit. So these are all some of the most common physiologic signs that I see in my practice, in addition to pain. And pain comes along with the CRP, which is known as C-reactive protein. That's an inflammation marker in our blood. That'll start to go up and the pain will go up. Sed rate, which is how sticky your blood is, as I talk to folks about. Platelets might increase as well. And you might even see eosinophils or basophils, which are white blood cell markers, that there is an allergic-y kind of surveillance reaction going on in the body, that it's sending off signals. Something isn't right. I'm getting overloaded. So yeah, actually, that's kind of what I look at to see what's going on physiologically if someone is starting to get to overload of the sympathetic nervous system mode.
What causes, can you walk us through like physiologically, so someone's in stress mode for a long period of time, what's causing multiple food sensitivities? Is it that when we're in sympathetic nervous system response that the body shunts blood away from the core, away from digestion, so digestion suffers? Does being in stress mode affect the microbiome? Does it increase chances of leaky gut? Or is it that when people are stressed out, they're probably eating foods that are harming their gut? Can you just walk us through what you think is the root cause? Why stress long term causes food sensitivities?
Yeah, I think all of those. So D, all of the above. Your microbiome changes as you're stressed because certain bugs are super sensitive. The lactobacillus family is extremely sensitive to stress, and you'll see it low on stool samples in someone who's really stressed out. Your gut lining separates apart with stress. One of the most common examples I use in my office is look at some of the big marathon runners who win. A lot of them will have bowel issues, and unfortunately, sometimes they get documented on some of the media in terms of the gut not behaving. And there is a true thing of gastritis related to exercise because of the stressors it puts on the body. And you don't actually have to run a marathon to have that same kind of reaction. The other thing with, like you were saying, the blood shunting away and being in the muscles, because we're at this state of any moment we need to run away from that bear, not having the blood in the digestive system to help us with circulating the molecules, things sit longer. We don't produce digestive enzymes like we should. We don't produce the hydrochloric acid to break things down like we should. And so that, combined with when we're stressed, we're usually eating on the go. We're usually not sitting down and taking our leisurely time to eat. We're eating faster. So bigger pieces of food get in the gut. They sit. they ferment, they irritate the lining, and now we've got issues with leaky gut happening there. Yeast is another common bug in the gut that is naturally supposed to be there, but in excess, its little fingers, it grows out and spreads cells apart. That can be a leaky gut factor. And we also have the factor of declining estrogens, in particular estradiol and progesterone. Lower amounts of estradiol will also have an effect on the gut lining, just like it has an effect on your skin. I like to tell folks that what you see on the outside on your skin is kind of a reflection of what's on the inside of your gut lining. So if you're getting wrinkly, chances are the inside of your gut is getting a little wrinkly and might be getting a little leaky at the same time. And progesterone, if we drop on progesterone, and just a little insight for folks, if it's not been mentioned or you're not familiar, when the body's stressed, we steal progesterone. We steal the precursors to make cortisol versus progesterone. And progesterone is needed to keep histamines in check. So if you're eating a lot of high histamine foods, like tomatoes, or let's go with nuts or seeds, or maybe some aged cheese, chocolate, all the good stuff in life. All of that stuff can create more histamine reaction within the gut, which creates more of an inflammatory reaction. And now we end up with leaky gut too. So there are a lot of different factors that can be contributing to this.
It's really interesting about histamine, that it's converted in the gut. Isn't it converted in the large intestine? Or it's broken down, I should say.
Yes, liver and large intestine have a lot to do with histamine breakdown. Yeah.
Can you explain a bit about that? Because I think a lot of people have allergies and then they just take medication for it. But of course, my listeners want to do things naturally and actually get to the root cause and heal. I had a woman who was on medications for many years for it was a prescription drug for hay fever and having to deal with pollen. She lived up in northern Alberta, and she said that if she didn't take her pill every day, that she would, during the spring and summer and even into the fall, if she didn't take it, she wouldn't be able to drive. Her eyes would itch and burn so bad. Her face would become puffy. She just couldn't even see enough to drive. And she started cleaning up her diet. She cut out all the gluten grains and took in a lot of antioxidants, took in some supplements. And then one day she's driving to work and she realized she had forgotten to take her medication and she wasn't having that response and she freaked out. So she stopped taking the medication just to see what happened. And sure enough, she couldn't believe it. But I've heard this over and over again, that when people cut out foods and focus on healing the gut and focus on taking care of themselves, that their doctor told them, their MD told them they would have allergies their whole life. That's it. You've got to be on this medication the rest of your life. And it's such an injustice that is done, because when she actually looked at the side effects, and it said that if you took this medication long term, it can cause cancer. And her doctor never warned her about that, which is really frustrating, that there are nasty side effects to so many medications. And yet we're just masking a symptom of a broken body, and we can heal our body. Mm-hmm. So just tell us a bit more about how we can help the body to metabolize histamine correctly and correct the situation for those who have allergies.
Sure. So histamine, so we got a couple different things. Diamine oxidase, otherwise known as DAO, is the enzyme that helps break down excess histamine in the body. And it can do it in our kidneys. It can do it on the lining of our intestines, also helps in the liver. And this enzyme is a game changer, but it can be blocked based on certain foods, and it can be blocked based on how irritated a gut is. So what can you do? There's a lot of foods, and there's a whole list, and I think it would be exhaustive for me to do the whole list, but often what I'm finding is having folks go through a list of the high histamine foods, to just really go, okay, how many of these am I eating in a day, and how much together? Because tomatoes, and cheese, like aged cheeses, that seems to go together in a lot of recipes. So do spicy foods. So do things like having pineapple salsas, for example. Now you've got pineapple and you've got tomato, two things that are super high in histamines. So it's a little bit of sleuthing out the histamine connection there. And there's a gal, Dr. Becky Campbell. She has a great book that I use for patients because it has 4 phases of helping you go through the histamine connections in the body and going, okay, how many of these things do I eat at once? And I joked earlier about the delicious things in life being part of the problem with histamines, because what I often will find is folks will come to me after they've been to like a wine party and they've had aged cheese, they've had like almonds, they've had chocolate, they've had sausages or different types of cured meats. And they're like, I'm so itchy and I don't feel good. And it's going, oh my gosh, you just like ate every single high histamine food, in the universe in one evening. And unfortunately, it's overload. It builds over time. And one of the ways that we can help our body to clear these guys is to limit the amount that we have in one sitting. But also, I will have folks, if you know you're going to go to a wine party and you know you're sensitive and you're just like, I don't care, I really just want to have fun. I will often have folks take a combination of nettles or quercetin. My favorite is a brand called, it's orthomolecular D-Hist. Don't know if you've heard of that guy. But it's one of my favorites for just knocking down histamine so that we don't have a reaction when we go out for that food. Now, granted, is something happening in your gut? Absolutely. It's not going to cure the issue, but it will help you to manage these things. And typically, as in the case of your gal that you were mentioning, I'm usually going to find out how many of the high histamine or DAO, diamine oxidase blocking foods, are they eating, and can we remove those over time while giving quercetin, nettles, things of that nature to try to help to manage this. Now, there's also ways to clear out the liver a little bit, because sometimes histamines will build up when our liver's overloaded with toxins, etc. I will often use milk thistle in that case to help clear the liver out, just kind of push things out of the way and detox. And then we have the whole concept of MTHFR, which sounds like a dirty word, but methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase deficiency. So this is a mutation, and you've probably had someone for sure talk about this on your podcast. And this can be another issue. And we're looking at B12 and folate as being helpers to clear out some of the histamines as well. And acetylcysteine can help, and looking just at the overall, lifestyle is kind of my favorite, is looking at how many things are we adding up to the system. And keep in mind that the more stressed you are just in general, the more your body's on surveillance mode, and histamines are your natural neurotransmitter in the body to tell the body something's up, something's happening.
I love that. I mean, this is such a great example of naturopathic medicine versus allopathic medicine. If you go to an MD, now I'm not MD bashing. I want people to understand that we have been brainwashed our entire lives by mainstream media, by Hollywood, by we have been brainwashed our whole lives to think that allopathic pharmaceutical based MD medicine is the only doctor to go to, and that all these other doctors are quacks, or they're quote unquote alternative medicine. They used, as part of their marketing campaign, they started coining holistic medicine alternative medicine to say that it was less than, that this is something that you would go to maybe in addition to or less than, and it's not, it's a nice alternative, but it's not a main medicine. Now, it's clever, but it's so misleading. So what we have to understand is that when you go to an MD, you're given maybe 15 minutes, right? Their type of medicine is great for surgeries, for injuries, acute injuries, not chronic injury, but acute injury, and infections, right? They're great at trauma care. You want to go to an ER filled with MDs, right? If you have some kind of trauma.
Absolutely.
But that's
yes, do not come to me.
But that's where it ends. you know, or I should say, you go to more of a specialized one like an OBGYN or you go to one for those specialized care. The naturopath, where they shine, is when you go to them, you're going to get a 45-minute to a 90-minute appointment. They examine your entire life and they figure out, oh, you're not breathing. You change your breathing. Now all of a sudden your thyroid medication's working. Like, they dissect your life and figure out, and they take labs, and they're a real physician, but they figure out, how can I help your body heal itself? You go to an MD, they're philosophically different. They're reductionistic in that they're looking to reduce you down to symptoms and parts and manage the symptoms, whereas it's a totally different philosophy that you have as a naturopath. And naturopathic medicine is looking at the body as a whole and how the system as a whole affects itself. So how is something as simple as not getting enough sleep or quality of sleep is affecting your stress levels, or the fact that you ate certain foods that are triggering histamine and you're in stress mode, and now that coupled with not breathing enough, for example, is making your thyroid medication not work. Like, these are things that an MD would never see because it's not part of their training or their philosophy when they approach medicine. So we as consumers, we as patients need to know when to go to which doctor. You're not going to always go to a plumber for every problem in your house. So why do we always in our society go to the same doctor for every problem? It's ridiculous. That's my little soapbox. I love naturopathic medicine. Because of naturopathic medicine, I was able to reverse some major diseases, and that's why I do the show. It's why I do this podcast, is to keep spreading this message so that people who didn't know that naturopathic medicine was available could find doctors like you. So in the last 13 years, you've been helping support the body's ability to heal itself. Can you tell us some stories of success where patients came to you with chronic problems, and through working with you, they were able to heal their body was able to heal itself?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably one of my favorite stories that I have, and I still see this patient to this day because we're still working in terms of maintenance for chronic pain. Because as an acupuncturist, I do believe that. And this is something too that I think, I'd love to folks to really embrace, is that, we need maintenance. It's not like we just, take care of ourselves and all of our main symptoms, go away and our stress goes away and life's perfect. We need to kind of maintain ourselves. You can't just it's the same with a weight loss program. You can't lose your 100 pounds and then expect to go right back to your way of eating. So I have quite a few folks who are on maintenance programs for helping to keep their body just in balance, little tune-ups. So today, actually, in fact, I saw a fellow of mine who has had over 9 different surgeries from multiple different accidents that he's had over the years. And he had very, very chronic pelvic pain to the point where he wasn't able to urinate properly. He was just not even able to sit properly. I mean, everything hurt. Standing hurt, sitting hurt, laying down really flat and still was about the only thing that he could do when he came in to see me. And so we looked at his labs, we looked at his lifestyle, we looked at where he was hurting and came up with a plan. And ultimately, what happened over time with this fella, we were working on breathing, and in particular, a lot of trauma stuck in his body from the multiple accidents that had really shut down his ability to metabolize carbohydrates. And so he was ending up gaining weight, and the weight just kept going up and up and up. And of course, he wasn't moving because he was in so much pain. So we first started working on what was going on with his stress management, because pain, of course, creates stress. So it took us, and we're now probably, we're about 4 years in, and I see him about once every 6 to 8 weeks. And he just came back from a very long motorcycle ride from here over to Boise, which is a good 8+ hours. And his muscles felt pretty decent. But if he had done that when I started working with him, things would have been extremely tight and tense, and he would have suffered for multiple weeks. And so by working with his breath work and working with acupuncture to help with controlling pain, I also worked with some herbs to help his body to manage stress better, adaptogenic herbs. And in fact, my favorite one is ashwagandha for calming elevated cortisol. And then I also worked with some cordyceps to kind of give them a little bit of energy. I like to think of ashwagandha and cordyceps as giving a little gas and then putting a little bit of the pedal and then finding what that sweet spot is for someone. So we worked with that for him to manage the stress. Now, in addition to all of this with the pelvic pain, we did pelvic floor release techniques. I actually work with a pelvic floor physical therapist with this fellow as well. And on top of that, he had a lot of gut issues and multiple microbiome bug infections. So a little bit of SIBO going on. And in this case, we treated his gut lining, kind of worked on getting it healthy, and then worked on what I call a weed and feed, which you may have heard from some other naturopaths if you've listened to this podcast long enough. But what we did was we helped him to balance out his microbiome. And we found that part of his microbiome issues really were coming from just grabbing quick foods, because when you're stressed and when you don't feel good and when you're in pain, you just, you're grabbing quick stuff and just whatever's going to feel good in the moment and not necessarily great in the end. And we found a huge connection with this guy and his gut and inflammation and contributing to the pain. So once we were able to kind of get him eating a little closer to nature, teach him how to cook a little bit because he wasn't so great in the kitchen on his own, we found a lot of big changes. And I didn't have to use a whole evil protocol, as I call it, with fancy antibiotics and things to take care of his SIBO. We rechecked it. Things are good to go. It just was ultimately calm the stress down, work on breathing, work on some meditation with him, work on visualization to work on clearing the pathways to open up the flow of blood in his body to create some blood flow for where he was having the stuck. Now, when I call it the stuck, the stuck chi, this might sound super woo-woo to folks, but pain is blockage in the body. It's energetic blockage if you get it to the woo-wooist, but if you get it to more of a scientific pattern, you look at it in terms of circulation. And as we're finding with a lot of the research on coronavirus and COVID-19, a problem that a lot of us have when it relates to pain, when it relates to stress, when it relates to organ failures and multiple breakdowns in the body is circulation. And pain is a circulatory problem. And so is an issue like a digestive complaint such as SIBO. Many folks have been through so many different treatments of bug killing and weed and feed and all of those different things and not had success. And I truly believe that it has to do with circulation. And so the last thing that I did with this fella is worked quite a bit on visualization with circulation in the gut and visualization with circulation through the different acupuncture channels, taught him a little bit about where they are, how they move, and really starting to enhance that. And added in nitric oxide boosting supplements to help with the circulation. And then on top of that, some vitamins and minerals to help with mitochondria. Because if we can't get blood circulating, we can't get our cells and little factories, the mitochondria, working properly. And so the combination of all of those together were what got him to be where he is today, riding motorcycles and doing so much better. There's some things I can't change because of his accidents, but he is, going from laying in bed and not functional whatsoever to up and about and participating in life again. That's huge.
I love that story. And just what a contrast. Imagine if he had gone. Now, did he go to MDs before he went to you?
Oh, yeah. He had been to so many different docs. I think he had said at one point, like 35 people. He had had it on his list in terms of all the different consults. It's crazy.
And they tried a bunch of different drugs, right?
A bunch of different drugs. He had been on antidepressants, gabapentin for nerve pain, Vicodin, you name it. He by the end they were just like, maybe you should, do some medical marijuana. Maybe that'll be the answer to your, issues, and kind of left it at that and told them we don't really have anything else for you. And really his biggest issue was the pelvic pain and pelvic floor dysfunction. And even though he had pelvic PT and even though he had tried to work on it in the conventional model, none of the pain meds weren't working. The gabapentin wasn't working. I think he even was, they're about to consider a biologic for him for his gut because they were like, you're, headed towards Crohn's. And it was just a change in the diet. He didn't need the biologic for the gut.
When you
It's
say
crazy.
biologic, do you mean like a stool transplant?
No, an autoimmune type of medication. So an
Oh,
immune blocking medication.
jeez.
Um, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Oh, I get so frustrated to hear that because so many people become so sick from all the meds, and it's just like the
Mhm.
body doesn't have a medication deficiency.
He was not having a medication deficiency, and if he hadn't gone to naturopathic doctor, what would have happened? I mean, who knows? I mean, much like many people who have given up on their life, really. I don't
Right.
want people to give
Well,
up.
and if an MD, like maybe if he had seen an enlightened MD, right, and who had sent him to a
Hmm.
pelvic floor, a physical
Hmm.
therapist, which I have a really
Hmm.
great episode all on that by a pelvic floor specialist, and it's so cool. It's such an amazing therapy for those that need it. Like women, most women pee when they laugh, and that means they should go see a pelvic floor therapist, physical therapist.
Yeah.
And men have this problem too, right? And so if men
Hmm.
have problems urinating or have pain down there or ejaculation issues, like they should get examined by a pelvic floor physical therapist because there's so many muscles down there, and often we're doing Kegels wrong and kind of putting it
Yeah.
out of balance. So if he had gone to just that, he still would have had his other problems because
Yeah.
you addressed the root cause, which was the way he ate, how he managed stress, his emotional issues around food and managing stress. You approached his life from an emotional standpoint and a physical standpoint, and then supported the body's ability to heal itself and come back into balance. And that's what we all want to do. Like I just tweaked my diet. I eat very clean, and I just made a tweak to my diet in the last week. And I'm waking up 2 hours earlier now. And I'm like, whoa, I have way more energy. And it's just amazing how we can make these. I like how you said it's like less is more. We can make these
Hmm.
simple changes in our life and get these big results. And I want to learn more from you today. I want the listeners to learn more. What kind of small changes can equal the biggest results?
Okay. Well, we've already talked about breathing. The next one it seems like a duh kind of component, but it is really important and often gets passed off, is really making concrete habits around drinking water. It really does make a difference. You really do need at least half your body weight in ounces of water a day. It hands down, I've seen simple things change, just with hydration. And in particular, I see a lot of pain. And so then I work a lot with chronic pain, and having someone better hydrated, let's put it that way, can make a absolute huge change in someone's quality of life, but also in terms of gut function, in terms of overall function. Now, another big thing is getting outside. And I just interviewed on my podcast Ian Hart, who's a great fellow who has a book dedicated to connecting back to nature. And he and I have a very big love for folks getting outside and smelling the roses and taking your shoes off and earthing. And it's super, my dad, I grew up in the middle of Illinois, super conservative area, and I was the hippie child wanting to run around with my bare feet. And I love it to this day. And I find a lot of people get great results with just calming their nervous system by kicking your shoes off and getting outside and just really feeling the ground again. Or just growing some plants, out, growing some herbs, whether it's, cilantro or something. I don't know why that one just came to my head. Oregano and mint grow in, the Pacific Northwest like wildfire here. But these are things that they're very simple that we just don't think about. And another big one is channeling your inner 5-year-old. So much of what's gone on with our life of adulting and having to be professional and having to change, our self and not being true to who we truly are, it reaps havoc on us. There's a lot of folks out there who are not in careers they want to be. There's a lot of folks out there who are not in relationships, and they're also not in a space of their being who they actually want to be. And so I have folks look at who they were when they were 5 and what did they love to do, and
Mm.
playing more during the day. You had mentioned your 5-year-old son, just looking at kids and how they play. As adults, we're too cool for that, and I don't know why we are. We need to kind of go back to that and really honoring, like, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, my workday's grinding, I'm not really having fun. Okay, fine, go outside. Who said you can't go outside? Who said you can't, like, walk outdoors? Who said you can't jump rope anymore? Who said you can't, you know use a hula hoop? Whatever it is, it's something that I think is absolutely huge and can make a world of difference. And it also ties into my next thing that I work with on a lot of folks is I put folks through 9 movements in my office. And it's hinging over, it's lunging, it's squatting, it's reaching forward, it's reaching back, it's turning left to right, and using those motions to see how good is your mobility. Because if you can't really bend over well, chances are your rib cage is locked up. And if you can't reach overhead very well, chances are that's a rib cage and a neck issue as well. And this blocks your ability to breathe, but it also blocks your ability to send proper signals from your nervous system to your brain, and from your brain back down to your nervous
Mm-hmm.
system. So all of this locked up in the body, we have miscommunication. And now we're contributing to that vagus nerve, which is our most important nerve of regulating the nervous system for those of you folks who are listening in. But it's also the nerve that controls inflammation in the body. And if it's telling your body, like, you're hunched over, your thoracic, like, so your rib cages are all kind of collapsed in, it doesn't rotate left to right very well, you might not be pooping very well, you might not be breathing very, very well, you might have gas, you might have bloating, and it's not SIBO. It's just that your thoracic cage is not moving well. And so what happens is your body can't control the inflammation in your intestines, in your gut, in your stomach. We have a lot of things related to this. And so I really, really work on mobility in my office big time with folks. I put you through the movements and we figure out how we can get you to move as best as possible within your motions. And I see a lot of change with that simple mobility.
So if someone, they didn't even realize it, they're doing mobility tests, and all of a sudden you point out that their rib cage is jacked up. How do
Mm-hmm.
you fix it? Do you give them exercises? Do you do physical manipulation? Do you send them to a chiropractor?
It depends on the situation. Now, most of the time, I am going to work on exercises because a chiropractor, love chiropractic, not knocking on chiropractic at all, or not even knocking on myself, because with acupuncture, it's something I'm doing to you. But we
Mm-hmm.
also have to have the homework, because I'm doing, acupuncture and telling your body, like, okay, this is what you're going to do, body. Here's the plan. And the body has to kind of go along with it and be like, okay, right, I'm going to come along. But we have to have the day in, day out. And the exercises are what get the results. It's not the all the manipulations. It's not all the acupuncture. I believe it works, but I believe that really it's focusing on the right exercises and having someone keep you accountable, but also having someone watch and make sure you're doing it right. Which, where PT can fall into place, but the problem and the limitation with PT, and this is because of insurance restrictions, I know from having so many good friends that are PTs, it's that we work on the body segmentally. But when I'm talking about exercises, I'm not just talking about your rib cage. I'm talking about what's happening in your lumbar spine, what's happening in your pelvis, what's happening in your neck, like connecting it all together exercises, not just rib cage exercises. So I believe the exercises are the way to go. And yes, I do some manipulations. I do a lot of cupping. I do a lot of gua sha. I do a lot of PNF kind of stretches and myofascial release. I think myofascial is kind of one of the most amazing things in the universe. And there are so many studies in Germany. So if anyone's listening to me and going, myofascial, what the heck? It's the wrapping around your muscle. So if you imagine chicken, that wrapping that's kind of around chicken when you pull it out of the package, that is your myofascial tissue that's can be stuck to your muscles, but also stuck to your skin. And it has a lot of nerves in it, and it can tell you where you are in space. And if it doesn't know where you are, if your body doesn't know where you are in space, it's going to send a message of pain. And a lot of chronic pain and a lot of chronic trauma pain has to do with myofascial connections. And there is a ton of research coming out of Germany, a doc named with the last name Schleip, great stuff. And you can totally Google myofascial Schleip and you're going to come up with a ton of info on it. And I do a lot of myofascial work because I think that is, in addition to the exercises, some of the most bang for your buck to get results.
How do you spell Schleip?
Schleip.
Thank you. Yeah, I had this really weird occurrence in my abdomen, almost like a hernia. And I went, actually got examined by an naturopath, and he wanted me to go see a surgeon. And I'd remembered that I was told by an old school naturopath, been practicing for over 20 years, over 25 years, something like that. He said, always go to a Bowen practitioner for hernia. And I went to her. I went to her 3 sessions it took for this so-called hernia to go away. And she said it actually wasn't hernia. It's very common after women give birth, that the abdomen splits open. And I forget the technical name for it. You're going to say it and I'll remember it.
Diastasis, yes. Or diastasis recti.
Diastasis recti, that's right. And so the abdomen splits open, and she did really neat things. A lot of free range of motion, like she would do range of motion, and then she would touch my clavicle. And then she would say, okay, lie here for 15 minutes, I'll be back. And then she'd come back, do free range of motion, and then she would touch my shoulder. And then she would come back, have me rest. And the whole time I'm thinking, this is a complete ripoff. She's not touching my abdomen. This doesn't hurt. It's supposed to hurt. She's working on fascia. It's supposed to be painful. She's barely touching me. And I stood up and I felt 2 feet taller. And I couldn't believe it. So my husband, I bought a package of 4 sessions. I didn't even need the 4th session. It was done. It was corrected. And
nice.
And so my husband, who had a chronic shoulder injury that would keep coming back for 20 years, he got on the table. She by worked on him, I mean, like, she would vaguely touch an area, then say, okay, lie here for 15 minutes, and then come back and just gently touch another area after doing range of motion. Again, we feel like she's like a witch doctor, right? And she said she was just helping the body release the stuck fascia, and his chronic shoulder pain for 20 years just disappeared. It was like amazing. It was so cool. He walked out of there having full range of motion of his shoulder, and he just couldn't believe it. Really, really neat. It's so cool. Like, if I'd gone down the route, what the doctor first told me to do, I would have gone to a surgical consult, right? I would have gone down that road, and I might have had some surgery to put some mesh in my abdomen. Whereas, go see a Bowen practitioner, right? So we have to know when to go to what practitioner. So you're looking at the body using physical medicine while you're also looking at the person as a whole and their life as a whole. You had mentioned also drinking half your body weight in ounces, and for those who are on kilograms, you take yes. your kilograms and times it by 2.2, and then drink that many ounces a day.
Excellent. Yes, we got to cover the Canadian folks and all of the European folks. I'm not as good at my metric system at all. I apologize.
No, it's fine. Maybe about 10% of our listeners are around the world, and so just for those who are like, well, I don't know how many pounds I weigh.
Yeah.
Basically, drink a lot of water all day long, as much as you can, right?
Absolutely. Water. And sometimes I'll also say, if you got some really good high quality sea salt hanging out, throw a couple grains in there, throw a little piece of, I like throwing berries in my fruit versus the citrus because I do think it can have a negative effect on the enamel if you do it too much. But that, having a little bit of raspberry, a little bit of blackberry, whatever berries in season, or even apple kind of tastes yummy in there. But I like to throw a little piece of fruit, couple like grains of sea salt, and now you've got like natural Gatorade, if you will, or a natural electrolyte drink, because it helps. A lot of us, we're burning through stuff during the day and maybe we feel dizzy, which is a super common symptom that a lot of people who are stressed out will feel. And sometimes it's just you need a little bit of electrolytes because unfortunately the stress that you're putting on your body is making your body think you're running a marathon. And what do folks need when they're running marathons? Electrolytes. So sometimes it's just, drink your water and throw a little bit of electrolyte trick in there, and see how it goes. It sometimes can be a game changer.
Coconut water is great for that as well. In
Yes.
lot of headaches and nausea and dizziness lately because people are wearing masks and definitely wearing masks incorrectly. But like medical masks, the disposable kind should only be worn for 20 minutes. And they need to be thrown out. People are keeping them for weeks and weeks. But
Yes.
I'm frustrated because I almost fainted in Whole Foods a few weeks ago. I was wearing a medical mask. They hand it out to you at the door, and so it was a new one. And I'm standing in line. I'd been in there maybe 15 minutes. And all of a sudden I started blacking out. Like I couldn't see, I couldn't hear. I'm getting dizzy. I'm falling over. I was so terrified. My heart was pounding, and it took me hours to recover. I was exhausted afterwards. The rest of the day was shot. I felt so sick.
Mm.
And I came home and I'm thinking, what's wrong? What's wrong? And then I read an article about, is it hypoxia, where you're
Mm-hmm.
breathing in your own CO2. You're breathing it in the
Yeah.
mask. And these are the masks that they're handing out at the door, right? But and I'm not exerting myself. I'm just walking around a grocery store. I spoke to a gentleman at a grocery store, was helping me find something last week, and he was wearing a mask, and I asked him, have you noticed that you or your coworkers are experiencing headaches? And he says, yes, we all have chronic headaches now. And he said, I actually blacked out a few weeks ago. And I told him
Wow.
about the hypoxia, but it's very concerning, especially for our
Mm-hmm.
state, Washington State. Our governor has now mandated that everyone wear masks
Yeah.
when in public. So I went to Amazon and Googled breathable mask, and I found one that's meant for hunting. And it has lots of little holes in it, and it's very breathable. So we don't have to. I'm very afraid for people, especially children, because they're putting masks on children. And if I, as a healthy adult, in 15 to 20 minutes of wearing a medical mask can get hypoxia. Imagine with these children that they're going to get brain
Mm-hmm.
damage basically from low oxygen, especially since now they're talking about children wearing masks 8 hours a day or 6 to 8 hours a day when in school and when in school
Yeah.
buses. And so it's very scary, and people need to know that, like, if you start developing headaches, like you talked about, breathing is so important, and lack of oxygen from not breathing correctly can lead to all these problems. Well, what about wearing a mask? Have you seen in your practice people have any negative problems with masks, and how do you handle it?
Oh my goodness. Yes. This has kind of put a wrench in some of my breathing techniques with folks, that have gone back to work because obviously they have to have the mask on. But yes, I cringed about Inslee's comments of us having to have him on no matter what, because not only am I seeing hypoxia issues, I'm also seeing a lot of sinus issues and allergy
Mm,
issues increasing because unfortunately a lot of folks in Washington, or probably in a lot of states where it rains a little bit more, we've got a lot of folks that have mold already in their sinuses.
mm,
And we add the mask to the mix, and now we're going to have folks that are recirculating what they're breathing, and if they're breathing out some, methane, or if we're looking at it in terms of methane or hydrogen that's coming from bugs that are in their gut, now we're recirculating that back through, up through the nose, in through the sinuses. And it makes me wonder, what are we doing to our microbiome of our sinuses and our digestive systems by recirculating air too? So not only the hypoxia component, I'm also thinking, like, what are we doing to are there going to be an uptick of folks with a lot more of allergies and issues of that nature? So yeah, in my office, we've been doing sinus needling, and we've been doing a lot more of reinforcing when you're home, that's when you're doing your deep breathing as much as you possibly can, getting outside in your backyard, and really trying to make a conscious effort to get the masks off more often than not. And when folks are going back to work, I'm going, all right, try to take time before you go to work out in your backyard, just breathe a little bit without that mask. And when you get home, that's like you're unwinding, as I mentioned earlier, taking the time to unwind in your backyard and get some fresh air that's not recirculated before you go back inside. Because now, on top of it, 1 in every 2 homes has mold issues in Washington state. And we've got folks being in homes, more and more mold exposure there. Then you're breathing stuff. This is a problem. We're going to have, like, honestly, you're absolutely right. We're going to have respiratory issues that are going to compound by a lot. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. And so I've started to have people use essential oils and masks to help with at least like opening up, vasodilating and opening up their respiratory areas. I've been using a combination of grapefruit and eucalyptus for some people. The doTERRA Breathe works, Thieves works. Anything that's going to help it to open up the sinuses. Thyme, tea tree, great stuff.
My favorite is Olbas, Olbas. Have you heard of it?
No, what is
It's my favorite. Okay, so you can get it at pretty much every health food store, Whole Foods, wherever they sell like a bunch of supplements. But I've been using it since the 90s. It's been around for a long time. It's a synergy of essential oils for breathing and the sinuses and the lungs. And I had this wicked sinus infection when I was a teenager, and I went to the crunchy hippie, but that smell, there's no health food stores anymore. Like, the old school health food stores, I grew up in them. My mom had me on soy milk. We were dairy free, and I've been seeing an naturopath since I was 6 years old, and my mom would take me in. I was never allowed to have chocolate, but I'd get like carob, or there'd be like this rice dream was the ice cream that I could have, or they would have this like frozen banana with carob coating on it or something like that, or they would give me a little honey stick. Like so I remember walking in and it would smell like all the herbs combined. And I just loved being there. If I could ever smell that smell, going into Old Apothecary, it just brings me right back. I love crunchy, hippie health food stores. Anyways, if you go into any of those, you'll find Olbas, Olbas, and they now have a bunch of different things. Just get the essential oil, just get the actual drops, not anything with a carrier. And then I like putting 3 drops in a big bowl of steaming hot water, and then you put a towel over your head and you lean over and make like a tent and breathe in the vapors. It's so great. It just it opens up all the sinuses. That's my favorite synergy for essential oils for breathing. Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm looking at it right now. It's got peppermint, eucalyptus. I do not know how to say that word. Cajeput. Don't know that one. Wintergreen, juniper, clove. All amazing stuff. Yeah. And what you just described, like a steam inhalation would be a great therapy. In fact, I just talked to somebody the other day about bringing back the steam inhalation therapy to help as a breathing treatment to help open those sinuses up. Yes.
And then I love, doing colloidal silver nasal spray. And colloidal silver is really good for helping prevent viruses from taking hold. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I love any type of nano silver products because what they're doing is they're a great scrubber of your gut lining too. So when taken internally in the gut, they are much like the effects that you'll see with N-acetylcysteine. They just scrub the lining. And so not only do they kind of cleanse out anything that's non-beneficial, they do the same when you do the spray in the nose, the throat. It just kind of wipes stuff out. And I like to use the colloidals. I like to use them combined with dead sea salt. I have a thing for the 2 of them because I like the combination because the oil, or sorry, not this oil, the spray will just kind of cleanse things and wipe out what needs to get wiped out. And then the salt kind of regulates. It's like the regulator in there. And so I like using both of them together and neti pots, with I don't use the silver in the neti pot, just to be clear, but I do use sea salt to in neti pots and then follow with a spray, because I think it's a great way to kind of even things out a little bit. And I think that could be definitely something that folks could add to their regimen to kind of help the headaches, help with
Mm-hmm.
preventing hypoxia, but also like the side effects of having these masks on for so long.
Mm-hmm. You know, I wish people would breathe, not have the mask on their nose and just breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, right? Because the
Yeah,
mask, I mean, what they're trying to have everyone do is prevent the droplets from coming out of your mouth. But if you
right.
breathe in through your nose, you're getting fresh air, and then you're breathing out the mask. It's no problem.
Hmm.
But then people, I've seen a lot of angry people. Oh, put your mask back on. So anyway,
Yes.
let's.
Yes.
We'll get
Yeah.
through it. We'll get through it. I want everyone to know that, like, if they start having headaches or feel dizzy, then that's a sign that they're
Yes.
oxygen deprived, and we've
Yes.
got to focus on the breathing. And as you mentioned, how important breathing is to staying
Mhm.
alive and staying healthy. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So let's see. We've talked about mold. Let's go back to mold for a sec. How could someone identify that mold is in their house? I've had a few actually really good episodes on mold.
Hmm.
Listeners can go to learntourhealth.com and type mold in. I have two episodes on mold mitigation, natural mold mitigation, and it's quite interesting, by a company called Green Home Solutions. I think they might have a branch in your area, but they use
Hmm.
an enzyme. It's a patented enzyme that actually digests mold. So not only does it kill it, but it breaks it down so that it becomes inert and doesn't harm you anymore. Because if you just bleach mold, it still is harmful to the body. The mold's dead, but it still releases the spores which harm us. So we have
Yeah.
to be careful with how we treat mold. But maybe talk about, how do we know we have mold? What are the physical symptoms that there's mold in the house that's harming us?
Yeah. So one of the big things that folks will notice is they'll start to have more sinus issues. I mean, headaches and sinus issues are usually the number one. Chronic fatigue, like starting to really be exhausted. Sometimes a cough can also be a big sign that something's not right. I've even had people with wheezing and they're like, I never wheezed before. Now I have asthma. And we're like, yeah, that seems odd. So, asthma kind of symptoms, things of that nature can definitely be a big sign that something is not right. And ways to actually test it, there's a couple different ways. You can run through regular labs IgE, which is an immediate sensitivity reaction, just to see if you've been exposed more or
Mm-hmm.
less. And sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't. It's not a foolproof plan, but because it goes through insurance, I like to test it just to see what we get. Just drag a net and see what happens. Um, I will, if we're really serious about going, okay, we know someone has mold, we've seen it in the home. If we absolutely have seen the mold in the home, and oftentimes what happens, and I encourage everybody to check this out, look at your mattresses, look behind your bed. That seems to be the hidden area for a lot of mold to hang out for some reason. And most of the time, what I find is that because the bed sometimes always ends up against the wall that is connected to a bathroom, if you have like a master suite kind of thing going on. But taking a look at that and then taking a look in your closet. And if you can, if you have carpet, peel up the carpet in your closet, see what's going on in there. Because I have seen some issues there for folks. Around the windows, we all kind of know, but still, taking looks there. And if you do have some mold going on, it's possible that you could have it in your body as well. And then a really great test is a test by, I can't remember, I think they might be Genova. For some reason, my mind just went blank on me, but Mycotox is the name of the test. Either of them are Great Plains, but I can't remember. Anyway, don't quote me on that one, folks, because I'm losing train of thought at the moment on that. But it's called Mycotox. You can Google that, and it'll come up what the brand is. And that test can tell you what toxins that you have in your body that are being produced by mold. So you can basically take it and look back at, okay, it's this particular mold based on the toxins that are produced. And that's one of my best ways about going about it. If nothing comes up from the immediate sensitivity reactions, you can get testing for mold through LCAT, which is Cell Science Systems, they also will do a delayed sensitivity mold test for you too to see if there's anything that pops up on that end. And then, like you said, Green Home Solutions, there's also some DIY mold tests that you can pick up on Amazon or through Home Depot or Lowe's and just get you a really good sense of what's going on in your home. Because I do think that it is something to not overlook for sure.
Absolutely. It's so crucial. So getting back on track with your going down your checklist, what else is really
Mhm.
important? We've got the breathing as the number one, um, drinking enough water, you talking about we're obviously, eating a healthy diet and stress management. What are some the impactful tweaks that are just small tweaks that make the biggest difference?
Yeah. So I think another big one that can make, and we talked about mobility, but another big one that I think can make a huge difference is looking at your mineral status. So many of us are deficient in magnesium, and selenium, molybdenum could be also an issue. And I think looking at where your minerals are at can give you a really good sense of how is the body working on a baseline level. And do you need some foods that are either rich in those minerals, or do we need to maybe have a little bit of some mineral supplementation for a little bit, retest, see how things are going. I would say probably 80 to 90% of the patients that I have tested for magnesium deficiency came positive with magnesium deficiency.
Hmm.
Vitamin D deficiency is another big one. So, I'm saying minerals. I would also say looking at some of the crucial vitamins too. Vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E in particular is a biggie. And Genova has a test called NutriEval, and they have one now that you can do at home. Metabolomics, I believe is how you say that one, and it looks for these things and tells us, how are the mitochondria functioning? Because this is a nice little tweak that, while I'm not pro, here's your suitcase of supplements, I do think that tweaking what we might have some deficiencies in is key for kind of helping ward off or manage what's going on in our body at any given time. So that would be something else that I would be really taking a look at. And then my other big thingy is looking at heart rate and heart rate variability, which can be tweaks that if you have a wearable that tells you where your heart rate's at, like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, you can see the actual reaction that your body has to stress and how high your heart rate goes up. But you can also attenuate it, meaning breathing down your heart rate. But you can also use your heart rate variability to tell about workouts and if you're pushing yourself too hard. And in my practice, I do see a little bit more athletes, and one of the big things is overtraining. And the everyday exerciser might be overtraining themselves and burning themselves out and not know it. And paying attention to heart rate and how your heart rate changes over time can be a really big deal. Plus, paying attention to make sure that you're not redlining your heart rate with every single exercise, because that's the point in which your exercising is not benefiting you. It's actually pushing your cortisol levels up, and you're wondering, like, I'm working out so hard. Why do I keep gaining weight, doc? Why do I keep being more tired? Well, because you're redlining every single workout. So that's another big tweak, is looking at your heart rate and breathing down your heart rate and keeping it in certain levels at certain times. Part of it's called conditioning training, and that's one of my specialties here in the office, is we work with heart rate variability and keeping people exercising, even though they might be fatigued, and getting them watching their heart rates so that they don't overdo it. Because most of the time, the reason we can't exercise and feel so tired is because we jump into a workout right off the bat and wear ourselves out too quick.
Mm. What what kind of tweaks make the biggest difference to someone's diet?
Yes. Fiber. So fiber's huge. Like we have the whole, like, should you eat keto? Should you eat paleo? Should you eat this? Should you eat that? Really, I tell people you should eat your vegetables. And It's probably not the most popular answer that people want to hear, because I know that a lot of people want to hear intermittent fasting. They want to hear, this diet, that diet's the best way to go. And honestly, if I've looked over my 13 years of practice, what gets me the best results in lowering cholesterol, gets me the best results in mineral status and just overall health in folks, gut function, it's eating your veggies. And of course, folks might argue, well, I can't tolerate this veggie, I can't tolerate that one. Okay. So the other big game changer tweak would be cook your veggies. And I'm not talking nursing home style. Blanch them, saute them lightly, just something so that they're a little pre-digested for you. And if we're talking about things that have lectins, then I'm going to say put them in the Instapot or pressure cook them so we can destroy the lectins. But veggies, and I'm not saying be vegan. If you want to do that, great. But really 5+ cups a day, venture on the border of 6 to 8 a day, and you're going to see some change in yourself. A lot of change.
It is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Get in those vegetables. You had mentioned earlier about increasing circulation and increasing
Mm-hmm.
nitric oxide. I had
Yeah.
Dr. Cadwell Esselstyn on the show, who is a cardiologist that heals heart disease naturally. Like
Mm-hmm.
4 clogs in the heart, totally reversed with vegetables, basically. But he says,
Uh-huh.
drizzle your steamed vegetables with balsamic. That balsamic increases nitric oxide, which opens up the cardiovascular system, and it's very healing for the endothelial lining of the cardiovascular system. He has people eat zero oil, because oil is pro-inflammatory to the lining of the cardiovascular system, and he has them eating something like 6 servings a day, so 6 bowls, basically 6 times a day, eating a big bowl of steamed greens with a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of balsamic on it, and it tastes amazing. I didn't like balsamic, but I started experimenting, and there's so many different balsamics out there. I had this one that's fig and maple. Oh my gosh, it's like eating candy. It tastes so good. And the one they sell, like the Kirkland brand at Costco, that's a good one. I like it. But there's so many different balsamics out there. So if you think you don't like balsamic, I would just explore the different balsamics, and because there's many different ones out there, and it's so good for you. That and beets, right? Beets help the body with
Yes.
nitric oxide, so they're also great. Any
Yeah.
superfoods, like saying have some beets every day, and any superfoods that are very healing for the body that people might not know about?
I don't know if there would be not that they know about, but maybe not that they knew what they had in them. Like celery has nitric oxide boosting abilities. Arugula also does.
Mm.
And my favorite, like most bang for your buck veggies are microgreens, because they have a ton of just packed with vitamin A, vitamin C, a lot of folate in there, because they're like the little babies that have to grow up and get all that nutrient to a big plant. And why not eat them when they're nice and densely packed full of nutrients? So microgreens are like my game changer solution for a lot of folks. I also, like I said, arugula, spinach, as long as you don't have a histamine issue or anything going on with oxalates and kidney stones, you could be good with the spinach, because that's also a nitric booster. 5 ounces of spinach boosts your nitric oxide. Beets are, like you had mentioned too, like I can't say enough about beets. They are, if you don't like them, play with trying to figure out a way that you might find them delicious. They're not what you might have imagined, at least in my age range. I used to think that beets were just like the canned, gross, slimy things. It's not all like that. You should try. There's so much more to them. Um, and then I'm a big fan of sprouted seeds, and like sunflower seeds, because of the progesterone boosting component for ladies in particular. I love just thinking about sprouted, any type of, like, even pumpkin seeds. It's got a good estrogenic effect. You can use it for balancing hormones. So those are kind of like my favorite go-to superfoods that I will typically use. And actually, one of my most favorite ones most recently, as long as you don't have issues with the garlic family, is the black garlic. Oh, so delicious and so great for adding flavor, but also has a lot of the same properties that garlic has, but without all of the pungentness and the breath effect. I mean, if you eat a lot of it. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. What homework do you want to give us? Do you have any homework that you'd love to assign us that we can apply to our life today and start seeing a difference?
Absolutely. I would give three things, and you can choose whether to do all three or you can choose to pick one. But these, if I had to like put all of my little tweaks that give you the most bang for your buck in order of what I see affecting folks the most, then I'm going to give them to you. Number one is breathing, but breathing fresh air. So if you can get outside, and granted, I know that there are smog and things of that nature, but sometimes just getting out of your home, you actually might have more beneficial air for you. And if you can get out by the trees and in a little bit of nature, fresh air, so much better. Bonus point to that, take your shoes off and really get back in touch with feeling nature and experiencing nature. Then my next thing from there would definitely be going on the lines of working on finding out about your pain in terms of where does it feel stuck? Where do you feel like things aren't moving well in your body? And either finding someone to help you with a little myofascial release, or even just starting with yourself and doing a gentle massage to that area. Now, I am saying this and going, I didn't say anything about lymphatic drainage or lymphatic work, but that would be another thing for another day. But I do support it in terms of helping move your tissue. So get outside, breathe some fresh air. And while you're outside breathing some fresh air, see where there's something stuck in your body and give it a little love, it a little gentle massage. And while you're breathing, hold on to that spot and try to imagine taking what's stuck in that spot and pushing it out through your feet. And that'll give you a little technique to manage stress, get some good air in, but also work on some stuck stuff in the body so we can improve circulation over time.
Do you have any studies that you can cite where they have proven that visualization has a physiological effect on the body?
You know what? Yes. In terms of the detailed ones, I might have to give you some details after we're off the call because I don't think I'll be able to pull them up right at the moment. But Dr. Joe Dispenza, everyone's kind of familiar with him. He's done a lot of work on visualization and change in terms of results that happen as a thought of visualization. Now, it's not 100% related to pain, but in some cases it is. We also have a lot of data on Qigong. So a specific style of breathing related to visualizing while doing Qigong that can help with change as well. So I would probably say, and I'm quick trying to put it in my computer really quick here, if I could find something briefly that would help you. But I think, so I don't waste anybody's time, we could probably give you some data afterwards if you're cool with that.
Yeah, I could totally put the studies in the show notes. If you off the top of your head, do you remember the results from reading any studies where they found that visualization like actually opened up blood flow, for example?
So one of the studies that I've reviewed here is the Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine Journal article back from 2018. And they were assessing acute physiological and psychological effects of Qigong in older practitioners. And what they found is that the heart rate variability, so the amount that the heart rate could be controlled over time, improved. Because as I'd mentioned before in the interview, heart rate variability is something that can tell us if we're tapping into our parasympathetic rest, digest, and chill state. And if we're not getting into that state, our heart rate variability increases. And how do we get our heart rate variability to keep it in check and manage it? We have to have proper circulation. And so this study was really awesome in that it looked at the correlation between the amount of times that someone was doing Qigong and their overall effect on heart rate variability. And so these folks were able to keep their heart rate in check much better by performing daily Qigong. And so we'll have the link to this article so that you can see that Qigong does work. It's not so woo-woo, and we've got some great data behind it, and why one of the things that I recommend for folks day in, day out for helping with chronic pain and stress management.
Awesome. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. Can you tell us how we can work with you?
Sure. So I am in Tacoma, Washington. So if anyone is local, you can come see me in person. I also offer programs online where we can do one-on-one coaching training. And I look at your labs. We go through all of that stuff to give you a great plan that helps address all of the issues that you're dealing with. Now, you can also find me on my podcast, the Health Fix Podcast. And that one is on every single area where you would find normal podcasts. And then my website is Dr. spelled out J Krause, KRAUSEND for naturopathicdoctor.com. And you can find me over there. And I've got all kinds of info in terms of resources and blogs and past podcasts. So that's a great way to get a hold of me. And if you're wanting to see my personality and a little bit more on me, you could head over to Instagram at Dr. Jannine, Jannine, Krause, Krause, and you'll find all kinds of fun stuff over there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You're welcome back anytime. Always love to have an naturopath on the show. Any last words of encouragement for those who are on the path to supporting their body's ability to heal itself?
Absolutely. So keep in mind that you have everything in you right now that you need to heal you. You just have to tap into it and work consistently. It's this, what happened to you didn't happen overnight. So it's going to take some time to undo what's happened, but you have everything there. It's just a matter of practicing and working a little bit at it, and you can do it. You've got the tools right there. Just tap into them. Get an advisor, get a mentor, somebody to help you with accountability, such as Ashley or myself, and find someone who's a really good fit for you and get that work done. You can do this.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Learn to Health podcast. Now you can go to learntoyourhealth.com and check out all of the wonderful resources there. We transcribe all of our interviews so you can scan through and read interviews. We have some really great free goodies on the site as well. If you have a friend or family member or yourself suffer from anxiety, I have a wonderful course where you learn tools on how to eliminate anxiety, how to turn off the anxiety response in the body, how to decrease stress and increase health mentally, emotionally, and physically. So go to learntoyourhealth.com, search through the menu. You'll see there's many resources on the site available to you there. Thank you so much for being a listener, and thank you so much for sharing this podcast with those you care about. Let's help turn this little ripple into a tidal wave and help as many people as possible to learn true health.